Hello, dear students. Today's lesson is about conditionals. Have a look. What is a conditional clause? A conditional clause consists of two parts. We have the first one, that is the if clause, and we have a hypothesis here which begins with the word if, and the main clause, the next one, which shows you the result of this hypothesis at the first clause, at the if clause, if part. So let's discover together and find out. If you study hard, this is the first part of the clause that begins with if, you will pass your exam. This is the main clause. So when the if clause comes before the main clause, we separate them with a comma. So if we begin with the if, we have a comma after the if clause. So when the main clause comes before the if clause, we don't need a comma. Now, let's read the sentences. The first sentence is about the first version, so when we need a comma here, it begins with the if clause. That's why. If the weather is nice, comma, we will go to the beach. So we use the comma here. And we have the next version, the next sentence. We will go to the beach if the weather is nice. So we began the sentence with the main clause, not with the if clause. That is why we didn't put a comma here. Let's go on and let's find out a table that represents us three types of conditionals. The first one is type 0, the second one is type 1, and the third one is type 2. So today we're going to talk about type 0, type 1, and type 2 conditional clauses. Let's begin with the first one. What is type 0 clause? Actually, it demonstrates a general truth, and the if clause, as we said before, is the hypothesis, and we actually use the present simple at this part of the clause, and at the main clause we use the present simple again. What is its usage? The usage of type 0 clause is something which is always true. It's a law of nature. As we said here, it's a general truth. Let's read the sentence given here. If or when you mix red and white, you get pink. So this is the first part of the sentence, the if clause, and we have mix present simple, and we have the main clause here, you get pink, and we have again the present simple. So what is that? It's a general truth, and that is why we call it type 0 conditional. Let's go on with the next one. The second one, it's type 1. So let's discover together what is type 1 conditional clause. It actually talks about the real present, and it is always something real. It is likely to happen in the present or in the future. But let's discover its structure together. At the first part of the sentence, the if clause, we use the present simple, and at the main clause, we use the future simple, the imperative or modals can, should, must, or may. Let's read together the sentences given here at the table. So, if he is late, we will go without him. So that is the first part of the sentence, the if clause. And we have present simple, and at the next one, that is the main clause, we have future simple, we will go. Okay, so let's continue. The second sentence, if you don't feel well, call the doctor. In this case, we have a don't feel and call. And at the next one, we have, if I finish work early, we may go to the cinema. So we have the first part of the sentence, that is the if clause, the hypothesis. We have finish, present simple, and we have the modal may plus verb go to the cinema. That is the next part of the sentence related to the main clause. So what is type 1 conditional clause? It talks about the real present. Okay, so let's continue with type 2, the third conditional for today. That is type 2 conditional clause that talks about an unreal present fact. So, what is the type 2 conditional clause? It's an imaginary situation in the present that it is also used to give advice. So, we have two cases to express the type 2 conditional that talks about unreal present. So, which are the two parts of the sentence? So, the if part we use, in the if part of the clause, we use the past simple, whereas at the main clause, the result, we use would, could, might, plus bare, infinitive. So, let's read the sentences together. If I had more free time, I would take up a hobby. So, the first part, we have at the if clause the verb had, the past simple, and the main clause would plus take up a hobby in this case, that is the main clause. Let's go on with the next one. If I were you, I wouldn't tell the truth. So that is when we want to give advice. So be careful and keep in mind that type 2 conditional clause is used to give advice. And we have the sentence here. So let's go on with another information about the conditional clauses. We can use unless instead of if nots and the negative part. In a conditional clause, the verb after unless is always in affirmative. We do not use will in an if clause. So, we have an example here. Unless he apologizes to me, I'll never speak to him again. If he doesn't apologize to me, I'll never speak to him again. So that is the unless usage in the sentences. We can use where instead of was for all persons in the clause of type 2 conditional. So be careful if you see that, it is type 2 conditional that we can use. So instead of was, we have where. If Jack were here, he would tell us what to do. So that is some extra information about the usage of conditional clauses. And we're going on with some practice for you to understand better. So, the first exercise is related to the zero conditional. So, we have the first one is if you don't water plants, they die. We have the words given here. You not water plants, they die. So, the first sentence that we form is if you don't water plants, they die. So, we have the if part of the clause and the main clause, and we have present simple and present simple. Let's go on with the next one. So, you have you, mix red and white, you get pink, and we have the version of the sentence, if you mix red and white, you get pink. Again, we have the two verbs in the present. You not sleep well, you feel tired. This is the sentence we're going to form. If you don't sleep well, you feel tired. So we have the if clause and the main clause. Both are in the present simple. Be careful. It be very hot, ice melt. If it is very hot, ice melts. Again, we have the two verbs in the present simple. The temperatures be 0 grade Celsius, water freeze. If the temperature is 0 grade Celsius, water freezes. So again, we have the verbs in the present simple. So let's continue with the next exercise. We have to complete the sentences using first conditional. So these are the sentences, and we're going to fill in the next part of the clause using first conditional. So let's read the sentences together. If you eat so many sweets, you will put on weight. That is the version I put in this sentence. If it stops raining, I will go for a walk. If you don't go now, you will miss the beginning of the film. If they miss the bus, they will have to take a taxi. If I don't do my homework, I will get into trouble. So have a look at the sentences. The first part of the clause, the if clause, we have what tense? The present tense. And at the main clause, the second part, we have future simple. So that is how you should fill the sentences given at the exercise. Let's continue with some extra practice about second conditional. So you have to put the verbs in brackets into the correct tense. So we have the verbs here. At the first sentence we have take, then stop, to be, give, lose, and find. Be careful, you have to use second conditional. Let's try together to fill in the sentences. If I had enough time, I would take you to the cinema. Be careful. So we have the verb take at the main part of the clause. If it stopped raining, we would go to the park. So we have the if part of the clause and we have the past simple of the verb here. If I were rich, I would help the poor. We have the if clause and we have the verb to be. As we said, we use were instead of was. Do you remember at the explanation before? If my friend had a headache, I would give him an aspirin. So we have the main part of the clause and we have would plus give, would give. If you exercised more, you would lose weight. Again, we have the main part of the clause and we have would plus lose. And the next sentence, if I found a wallet in the street, I would take it to the police. So we have the if part of the clause and we put the verb in what tense? In the past simple, we have the verb find. In the past simple, we put found. So, let's talk about your homework for next time by keeping in mind all the exercises we went through together and the explanation related to the conditional clauses. You have to complete the sentences, but be careful with the right conditional clause. The first one is, if I were an animal, if I had one wish, if I had a personal problem, if I were rich, if I were the Prime Minister for a day, So, take notes with the sentences you are going to complete and be careful with the right version of each of the sentences by keeping in mind which conditional clause you should use at the sentences. So, that is all for today, and I want to thank you for your attention. Goodbye.